Hey guys, it's Mia here and welcome back to another bookish video. Now today I figured I'd want to talk about books and talking about which ones have my most favorite setting, which ones I felt like had a cop-out ending. This is just going to be a book that I deem the most in its category. Starting with a good one, my most favorite manga, and that is Wolf Children by Mamoru Hosoda. Sorry if I butcher your name, I don't speak Japanese, so I apologize, but I first watched the movie of the Wolf Children, and then a few years ago my friend got this for my birthday as a gift. And this story is just so heartwarming and so sad. I haven't read it in a while, but it's still one of my favorite mangas of all time because it's just so heartwarming. And it's about a single mother that raises two children that are actually half wolf, and how she has to deal with figuring out how to raise them on her own. The artwork is stunning, the story is so touching, and it's just, if you're in need of a big heartwarming story that's an easy read and an enjoyable read, pick up Wolf Children or even watch the movie because they are so similar in tone, and it feels like the creator of the movie really cared about this manga because it's to the T of the story. But it's just, I love this manga and it is one of my favorites still to this day. Now, this one is going to be the most cop-out ending I have ever seen in a book. And this comes to us from an author called Margaret Peterson Haddix, and it's called The Palace of Mirrors. Now, this is a young adult story that I got it in middle school at one of the book fairs. I loved book fairs. Anybody else love book fairs? Hi, I love book fairs too. But I got this there because it looked interesting, and this was not the first book that I've ever read from Margaret. I read her book Found first, and that was one of our readings for reading class. So I enjoyed her writing, so I picked this up. And this ending was such a cop-out because the story goes, there's a girl who is raised in a poor village, and she ends up finding out that she is supposedly the princess of this land. But then they find out that there is also 13 other girls that claim to be this lost princess as well. And instead of actually figuring out who the real princess was, they're like, oh, they're all the real princess. They're all my daughters because I adopted all of them. And I'm like, story, you had me going for a long time, and then you had to go with this huge cop-out ending that just ruined it. Like, they're all your kids because you adopted all of them? No one was the true princess? You couldn't have put a little more effort into that ending? Because that was it went from like this high standards to like clear down there as soon as she said, well, they're all my kids. I'm like, what did we sit here reading the whole book for? Watching her struggle to figure it out and competing with these other girls to prove that she was the true princess. Why did we go through all that for it just to be, oh, everyone's the princess? That was the biggest cop-out ending I've ever seen in a book so far. Then the next one is one of my favorite authors, and one of the most effort put in a book. And that is, of course, Rick Riordan and like basically all his series. And I know I've talked about this in my review that I've done for these books, but the amount of effort and care he puts into getting the Greek and Roman myths accurate and correct is just astonishing to me, and you can tell he really cares about the subject matter that he is writing about. And it just shows so much, in my opinion. And that is why Rick Riordan is one of my favorite authors, and I feel like he puts the most effort into his stories. Now, that's not to say that no one else puts effort into their stories or tries to flesh out their world, but the amount of care and research and all that he does is just amazing, and it makes you feel like he really does care about what he's writing instead of just trying to make a quick buck. You could tell he cares about the myths, and you could tell he wants other people to see the myths as he does. And I really like that about Rick Riordan. I commend him for that. It's really good. Now the next one is one of my favorite childhood series, and one of my favorite, mystery stories, and that is the Boxcar Children. Now, I was first introduced to this series from my grandma, I believe, and I have up to 15. There are a lot of books in this series, and I haven't read them in a while, so I'm half tempted once I'm done with the books that I am reading, because this right here is all the books that I have to read. It's a full bookshelf. But the Boxcar Children centers around a family of siblings that is homeless, living in a boxcar that they put on trains. And they end up living with their grandpa that they find out is alive. And all these mysteries and these riddles start to come to life. And they have to figure out the riddles and solve them to figure out the mystery behind what is going on. And they're not very long. They're only about, 150 pages or so. And they are really gripping, and the mysteries are not that easily solved, even if you're a little older when reading them. But it is just so enjoyable, and I love the mystery behind it, and Boxcar Children does it really well. Then one of the scariest kid books I've ever read, and my mom read this one too, and there's actually a funny story that goes along with this book, is Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Downing Han, sorry, not good with names. But this is about a family that moves in to an old church, an old small church, and there's a graveyard beside it. And their daughter starts experiencing paranormal phenomenon because of this girl, Helen. And she died at this church, and so she kind of haunts the place. And my mom is not much of a reader. She reads on occasion, but she ate this book up because she likes the spooky stuff too. And the funny story that happened was a couple years ago, I had a friend over, and for whatever reason, my bookshelves were driving her insane. So she was like, "Can I redo your bookshelves?" And I'm thinking, go ahead. If it's bothering you that bad, go right ahead. If I don't like what you do, I'll just switch them around when you go home. And I had books everywhere at that point. So she put this book on the bookshelf and started moving on to putting other books on the bookshelf. And I went to my closet to get the pile of books that was in there. And that's when I saw this book. And I was like, "Didn't you just put this book on the bookshelf?" And she looks at me and her eyes go wide, and she's like, "Please tell me you have 2 copies of this or I'm gonna freak out." And so she goes back to the bookshelf because she was messing with other books, trying to alphabetize them or whatever. And she pulls it out and she's like, "Oh, thank goodness, I thought a ghost moved it. I was about to freak out." So that was funny. We thought a ghost moved the book for a second, but it turns out that another friend of mine had given me a whole box of books that she had stashed in her attic because she wasn't going to read them and she knew I likes to read. So she gave them to me, and there was another copy of this book in the box, which I didn't realize. So we just got a little freaked out thinking the book switched places, and it was just made creepy because this book was a ghost story. So then the next one is one of my favorite worlds, and You might think it's the Harry Potter world, but it's not. It's actually the world made in the Red Queen, and I really enjoy the story of the Red Queen, except for the last one. It was such a disappointment. I waited a year to read that book, and it just... But that's why I keep my books. I'm going to go back and give it a second chance. So this is my most favorite world building in a book, and I just like how fleshed out the world is. The world building does not seem rushed. It seems smooth. It seems like the world could be a place you could actually visit. The reason I didn't say the Harry Potter world is because that one's been done to death. So that's my most favorite world. Now, my most hated character, especially in the second one, is Ren from A Curse So Dark and Lonely. Now I'm going to talk about this more in my review of A Heart So Fierce and Broken whenever I get done with that book, but I did not like Ren in the first one. I know I said that in my review. I did not like Ren. He is an arrogant, manipulative jerk that's stuck in his own head. And he only continues to be so. And then in the second book, he's like, I'm just going to plummet right off of it because I turn into even more of a monster than I was in the first book. And like I said, I will talk about that in my review of A Heart So Fierce and Broken. I am more than halfway done with it. I am taking my time with it because, oh boy, but at this point, I just want Rin to fall on his own sword because he has turned into that much of a monster. I hate him so bad right now, and it's justified. But like I said, I'll talk about that more in my review of A Heart So Fierce and Broken. But that boy just needs to fall on his own sword. Saying that right now. Then the most weird scene and the most awkward scene to read was when, for whatever reason, it's never explained, it's treated as if it's a normal thing to do, and Susie goes into Ruth's body. And now, Ruth has been friends with Susie's crush. I can't remember his name right now, but Ruth has become close friends with Susie's crush, my bad. They go back and hang out, Susie trying to pretend like she's Ruth, but her crush knows that something's up. He's like, you're not acting like yourself, Ruth. Is everything okay? And she goes, yeah, everything's fine, just feeling off today. And he goes, wait, Susie, is that you? And somehow he knows that Susie is in Ruth's body. I hate this scene. Why did it need to exist? So then they're hanging out at her crush's brother's workshop, I believe. And so they end up having sex. What am I supposed to say about that? Like, I don't even, just, why did that need to exist? Like, I don't know if Ruth let her in her body for a minute or why she would, but she's literally having sex with her crush, and mind you, she is 14 when she died. So that's weird, because now he's like 21, 20, so that's odd to begin with. And then she is in her friend's body having sex with her crush. It's not her that has to deal with the consequences if Ruth gets pregnant. It's Ruth, because it's Ruth's body. And I'm just like, this scene is so gross. Why is she having sex with somebody in somebody else's body? Why did she come out of heaven in the first place? And why did she not tell anyone who her killer was? She had the perfect opportunity to tell people, Mr. Harvey killed me, and get him arrested or put on death row or whatever, because he's done this to multiple people. I'm sure the death penalty would have stuck. But She doesn't do that. She has sex with him in somebody else's body and then she leaves. Why did you need to include that scene? I would have been perfectly happy without that scene ever having existed. Now, if she went in Ruth's body, if Ruth gave her her body for the opportunity to tell them who her killer was, and she took that opportunity, this probably would have been a 5-star in my opinion. But freaking, she uses the opportunity to have sex with her crush, who is now 20 or 21, and then leaves. What the absolute fuck happened? I don't get it. I don't like it. It was awkward to read. I was basically thinking it was rape the whole time, even though it was consensual. Just, why? Why? What else can I say about that scene except why does it exist? That was the most awkward, most unneeded, just most strange scene I've ever had to read in a book. And it was a wasted opportunity for the main character to point out who her killer was. So that was the most in each category of books that I enjoy. So hope you guys enjoyed and hope to see you next time. Bye guys.